I do see our first guest is here. Let's bring in Victor Santillan III. How you doing, son?
Hey, hey.
What's going on?
Not bad. How you doing, brother?
How you doing? How you doing? Got to see you fight before, but I think this is the first time I'm getting to talk to you.
That's right. Yep, that's right.
Main event victory, hometown. Wasn't even supposed to be the main event. Like, how was last week? How was 2 weeks ago for you? Like, what was that whirlwind like?
So, I was originally gonna fight like towards the end of the fight card, and the CFC, one of the promoters told me, "Hey, like you got bumped up. It just happened overnight." And then I went from the co-main to being the main event, and it was amazing because I believe I needed that little extra push of like, hey, like all eyes are on you, but I didn't feel any pressure whatsoever. I kind of felt more of a honor, like I'm able to display my techniques, the things I've practiced, and most importantly, my character, in front of a huge crowd. And I was very blessed enough to just go out there and perform. So it was very awesome. It was pretty cool, and it was an honor. It was a very much of an honor for me. So.
Just that honor. There were no extra nerves or butterflies when you're told, "Hey, no, not co-main event. Actually, spotlight. You're in the main event. It's all on you now. You are the focus point of the show."
You know, I won't lie to you. Obviously, every fighter gets nervous, but for me, I believe the nerves came from I pray to God I just show out. I show out. Not only win, but I put a dominant performance to see. Because obviously, my last fight didn't go as planned. I left it to the judges' scorecards and I lost. And it was horrible. That lesson itself taught me that I'm not sure when I'm gonna fight again. Even if my body allows me to. So I went out there. There was nerves of like, what, just I want to go out there, perform, and get out of there safe, and I did. I just got a little bit of a scar right here and a little cut, but that's about it. Besides that, I'm back on July 11th, so I think it's gonna be good.
Right back to it. But before we get
Hmm.
too far away from the night, from what it was, how did you savor that experience? Like, did it feel any different walking into the arena? Did anything feel different as you're the main event? You got to be there a little bit later, usually, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, most definitely. It was something that I would really like to get used to. I liked it a lot. It felt, obviously everything was new, but it felt right. Everything felt right. I liked the spotlight. I liked the extra pressure. But in reality, it's just it was awesome. It was awesome being able to fight in my hometown and the Coliseum as a main event and winning first round TKO. But I learned a valuable lesson from my last fight is, you took a loss and I took it very humbly. And I also gotta take my wins very humbly. So I celebrated a little bit, but not too crazy. I just went to go eat some fast food. I came back home, and right now I'm going back to work. Actually, well, I'm gonna go to practice right after this. So
What was the feeling like for you walking out? And there's 3,000 people there. You're the main event, and there's 3,000 people. What's that like hearing your music and making that walk?
man, it was like nothing I've ever felt before. Just the love, I felt the love of my hometown, and it's something that I will always carry in my heart, especially as my first main event. I pray to God I will have many more, but this one was just very special because everybody that has supported me, even from day one was there. So it was just it was kind of like a thank you to them of like, hey, like you invested your time, your trust, and your effort, and this is my way of paying it back. So.
It was about 4 minutes of work that you put in. What was it about the performance? What did you do? What was right on the night?
So I technically practice a little bit of everything, right? But every fight, before obviously, I would cater to my opponent. I'm fighting a wrestler, so I'll wrestle more. I'm fighting a striker, I'll strike more. But this time around, I told myself I will make sure that all the areas of MMA are covered, and I'm gonna fight my own fight. I'm not gonna cater to nobody anymore. I started being a little bit more selfish, where he might be whoever I'm fighting next, a D1 wrestler or a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Obviously, I will get that on check, but I want to fight my own fight. I will make sure at the pressure that I want. And the preparation was a little bit more intense. I'll say that. It was a little bit more intentional and more personal. I wasn't allowing myself to go off track or even, just making the old mistakes of my last fight. So I made sure every day I was getting the work done and just recovering and doing it all over again.
What do you feel was like the biggest improvement that you made from that last camp to this camp?
For sure, mentally. It was more mental work. I always knew I had a very strong character and a lot of grit. But where this last fight went wrong was that I was fighting with a little bit too much emotion. I got pissed off. I didn't like my opponent, and he didn't like me, so it kind of added up. And the fact that I was, angry during the fight, that kind of itself kind of got me sidetracked. So I was just trying to hurt the guy instead of winning the fight. So I went back to the drawing board, told myself I need to be a little bit more cold hearted. I need to go out there and don't feel any emotion. I get hit, just keep your hands up and hit back. Or if I drop somebody, I can get overly excited. I got to be controlled. So I decided to be cold hearted. Even in my fight, I dropped the guy with my right hand and I just walked to him. I didn't get excited. I didn't feel anything because I knew the job wasn't done. Once they raise my hand and they call off the fight, then I can feel something. But during the fight, I wasn't allowing myself to feel excitement, feel mad, feel anything. So that was pretty much the whole trajectory of the last fight to this one. And I liked it. I am going to continue to do that. So
How do you push and achieve that much mental growth in a couple months?
um, I believe it was just the fact that I lost in my hometown in front of my wife, in front of my family, in front of my coaches. And I have never felt so exposed to the world, where like I lacked wrestling and I lacked uh, a little bit of a skill set that I knew I could have achieved and done properly. So just the fact that I wasn't prepared for my last fight into this last fight that I had, that feeling, I just never wanted to feel it again. So I make sure I worked my ass off in order not to feel it again. And it worked, it worked. I went into obviously my core self and just started digging what I was doing wrong. Why was I feeling this way? And sure enough, I felt clean. That's what I told everybody. I felt clean. I felt collected, and I just felt whole. I felt as a complete as I could feel. As a fighter, and it just it worked out. It worked out to my favor, and I felt good. Wasn't even walking out.
Your coach is the matchmaker for the
Mm-hmm.
promotion.
Yep.
Carlos is a big fan of yours, obviously. When he's the one, part of it that decides you're moving up to the main event from the co-main event, you're getting this kind of opportunity.
Mhm.
Does that hit different than it's just a different promoter when it's your coach sees that potential in you?
So we actually have kind of like a rule. So sometimes when we talk about CFC and when we talk about coaching, I tell him, hey, I want to talk to you like my coach. And then we start talking. Or, hey, I want to talk to you like a promoter. We start talking. Because obviously he carries a lot of roles, right? Um, but when he told me that I was moving up to the main event, I told him, okay, I've done the work. There's really nothing else, going through my mind. And like, I'm the main event and I get to show out my skills. But since he is my coach, it was kind of like a realization where like, we're doing something good. We're doing something good. And for me to, it was my second professional fight, and for me to be the main event, it could have felt a little bit like I was out of place, but it didn't because I believe I've done enough work to prove the fighter that I am already. And it was wholesome. It was wholesome to be able to be one of his fighters and be in the main event and getting this victory, under his name. So it was very cool. It was pretty cool.
I believe it's 2022 was the first amateur MMA fight.
You know what? You might know. I don't even know, but I believe so. 2020. Let me think. Let me think. I fought when I was 19, and I'm gonna be 21. 19. Yeah, yeah, 2022. That's right. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
How long were you in the gym before that fight?
That was funny. So I was training under Zen martial arts with Mando, and I was training for about 6 months. 6 months, and once I got that, hey, like, so I started training. I didn't want to fight at all. I didn't want to fight. I was just gonna do it because I was gonna go to wrestling for college. But then I got the opportunity to fight, and I took it, and they were like, "All right, man, like, don't expect anything else. You're gonna fight." I did one smoker before that, and it was cool, but I just wanted to feel the actual adrenaline of it all, So I got the fight in Fight World when it was in Fit NHB, and that was actually the first time I go to an MMA event, and it was pretty crazy. I was like, man, I'm seeing people, breaking their arm, and then I saw somebody bleeding, and I was like, man, this is intense. Like, this is what a fight is. So I remember I was at their fight, and I was like, all right, let's do it. I'm ready for this. And sure enough, I did it, and it was crazy. It was a crazy experience.
You were going to go to college for wrestling, and then the
Yes.
sport stole you.
Yes, big time. So when I was gonna go to wrestle, COVID hit, and that kind of drew me back from it because I was also gonna go into debt right away. And I love wrestling, but I know for a fact my heart wasn't there. I wanted to do something more aggressive, and something more new. A new skill set. And sure enough, I landed into MMA, and I landed in an MMA gym, and the rest is history. Here I am.
What was it? What would you say that you found in finding MMA?
um, I believe the dominance of the sport and how primal it is. I believe that's why I fell in love with wrestling, and that's why I fell in love with MMA. It's very primal. It's very, and it is. Some people might think it's black and white. You put in the work, you're gonna win, but that's not also guaranteed. So I kind of like the risk of it all, and I just love fighting. I fought even before I knew how to fight, and it was pretty silly, but I fell in love with the fight game, and just having that feeling of knowing that I can carry my own. I never had to prove somebody. I never had to prove myself to somebody before with fighting and stuff, just because I loved it. I loved it from the get go, and even when I started, I had to kind of train a little bit behind my parents' back because they didn't let me fight. And then right after, I mean, they fell in love with it too. So it was pretty cool. It was a cool little journey of having my family supporting me at the end, and obviously my wife.
You said at the beginning, I was fighting before I knew how to fight. That just
Mhm.
sounds like the introduction to there was a deeper story there, and then you kind of trailed off in a different way. So what's the lead up to that sentence?
Oh man. So we're about to go way back to 14-year-old Vic. I used to get bullied a lot. And I used to be a little chunkier, and I used to get picked a lot, especially because also English was my second language, so people would pick on me. And at that point, even up to this day, I don't like all this like shit talk. I don't do shit talking because I just don't like it. I rather just do the work. So even before that, when I was little, people would just pick on me. Now just start fighting. I'll start fighting, even if they were joking or not, because I don't know. It was just I was always the target when I was younger, and fighting just helped me out tremendously. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna open the door. Hey, just my wife came in. Let me open the door real quick. I'll be.
And there's the dogs. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, the dog.
We're live, people. This happens. Just quick
Yeah,
break.
I'm so sorry. Quick break.
Victor Santillan III is our guest. It's my fight show, taking a journey with him, coming off the main event victory at CFC 6. And back to what you were saying, sir.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's just my dog. She's a little
You're good.
scandalous, but so yeah, I started fighting when I was younger, middle school, and I never fought in high school because I used to start wrestling, so I knew if I fought in high school, I would get kicked out. But in middle school, I started fighting, and it wasn't even nothing crazy. It was just like a little, the little scraps people like boys get into, and after that, I kind of knew the feeling of fighting a little bit, but I just wanted to get a little bit more detail of what it is, how to actually fight. And that's how it started, just being able to defend myself at one point, and I just fell in love with it, where I just was more curious into seeing how better I can get.
And it's captivated you in that way that it's kept you focused. It's captivated you where it seems to be a pretty major part of your life.
Exactly. So I always tell myself I'm fighting for a deeper meaning, and it's not usually just for the love of the fight game, but it's also for the love that I have for myself almost, because at the end of the day, I always tell myself when we have a the ref meeting, right? They always tell you protect yourself at all costs. And that's right. You have to protect yourself at all costs. And the fact that everything is relying on me, on my performance and on my skill set to win, I like that. I like that power that I have to a certain degree, obviously. And, that I rely on my own skill set to win, so that kind of triggered that emotion of mine where I'm hooked. I got hooked to the fight game.
What do you think has been the biggest, like, I don't know, how to, what has been the biggest adjustment from what you were expecting to how training and how the fight game has been?
So I always knew fighting was hard, even from the early stages, because even when I used to wrestle, I knew wrestling was hard, but then I started fighting, and it kind of trickled down a little bit where I have to still be on my toes and still show up every day. But I the adjustments I had to make over time was obviously just knowing what my flaws were, because when I started fighting, my ego was also pretty big, I didn't like that, I always thought I had everything under control until I lost my second fight right off the bat by TKO in the first round. And right after that loss, it kind of taught me a little bit more about myself, and obviously about the MMA game, where it's harsh and it's cruel, but you can make it into a lifestyle if you put in the work, and obviously if you carry yourself well enough and not think you know it all. So immediately, right, I remember that week after my loss, it was pretty sad, but it was also very constructive in a sense of my own mental game, where I knew I had to change the way I was. If not, this will happen again. And sure enough, I did. I did. And it wasn't until my first pro fight where I lost again, and I hadn't felt that emotion in a long time. But then again, I view it like a lesson, because I didn't lose anything, if I'm being honest with you. I gained a whole bunch of experience against a very well rounded fighter, and I took it upon myself to make sure that I get better. And my last fight was living proof.
What would you consider the biggest inspiration right now for your fight career?
Oh, it's obviously my wife. My wife, and I have a beagle. That's the dog you heard barking right now. But it's the fact that I want to provide a very nice life for us, and maybe in the near future for my kids, and um, it's that most importantly where I know I can create something out of this. I don't know what it will be, but I want to create a life around the sport, and being able to just give back to the community that once helped me, in the later run, maybe opening up my own gym, and, having a couple of businesses. But it's mostly my family, the family that I am creating, and the family that I already have, like my parents, my sister, and, all so, all my support system. If I'm being honest with you, I want to be able to give them back what they have gifted me, and that lights a fire on me, every morning when I don't want to go to train. That's exactly what the people I think about, and having my wife next to me, I just have to make sure that I keep myself on check and just be honest with myself, and go to work, just like that. So I believe that's my base inspiration.
Were they that group of people? Was there any surprise from them when you were like, "Oh, I'm hooked. I'm committed to MMA. This is what I'm doing. Plans have changed."
So for sure, my parents were a little bit against it from the early stages of it because they care about me, and they didn't know the capability I have as a fighter until they saw my first fight, which is with Greg Allen, and I finished in the first round, TKO, and they were like, "Oh, this is awesome," But then I lost in the second fight, and they're like, "All right, this is a little bit dangerous." So it was pretty funny, but they were just surprised of how much of an impact this sport has done in my life. And when I was dating my wife, I was already training MMA, so she kind of just grew with the sport with me, because I was also very green into the sport, and obviously she didn't know anything about it even before me. So we both grew with the sport, and it's a very beautiful sequence of life where we both grew in the sport and also in a relationship and around with my family too. Everything just became a little bit more stronger. And I believe that's because MMA just brings the raw emotion of everyone, where it's happiness, when it's sadness. And it was awesome, but obviously it was a little tricky at the beginning, having my parents worrying about me all the time, and injuries, concussions, and all that stuff. Always, it's always scary, so.
When you walked out of the cage for CFC 5, it sounds like you kind of already had an idea of what needed to improve, what needed to adjust. You kind of felt it in that moment. But now you come off of a highlight reel victory. You're on cloud nine from CFC 6, and you already know you're fighting at CFC 7. So now, how do you reevaluate an attack, adjusting and evolving and improving with the same tenacity coming off of a spectacular performance?
Um, I did not let this win get into my head. So I didn't let it almost fulfill me, because it's my first win as a pro, And even though it is a very big accomplishment, it's something that I just had to flip the page and make sure I go back to work because I have another fight in July, And if I want to keep this going and this career going, I have to make sure that, I celebrate, not even celebrate, I just acknowledge my wins, enjoy them a little bit, and back to work, because at the end of the day, I am not where I want to be, especially with the sport. I know I can be a better fighter and a better human being. And I believe with time and effort, that will happen, And a lot of people talk about, oh, I want to make it to the UFC. I want to make it to one, or I want to make it to all these big promotions. And in my eyes, I would love to make it to those promotions, but I know if I focus one fight at a time, giving it my all, those promotions are going to come regardless, So I I live by the day by day mentality where every day I make sure I put 110% and I go to sleep fulfilled with the fact that I made the work, I made things happen. And that's how I am focusing for my upcoming fight here in July. I'm gonna focus on making sure that everything is well established. I have good habits every day where I have to work, and sometimes the work doesn't have to be physical. Sometimes, like I mentioned, it has to be mental, and making sure everything's on check. And July 11th comes around, and I'll make sure I'll not only put a performance, but I dominate once again. So
Did they already announce your opponent?
yes, yes, everything's announced. CFC 7 is coming up. It's in my Instagram. I forget his name, but they have the flyer set up. You can check it out on my Instagram page, and we're ready to roll.
Trying to jump over there. All right. Oh yeah. Okay. I did see it before. Briones,
Yes.
Canelo Briones. All right. All right. Hey, yeah,
Hmm.
he really is a Canelo. That's kind of interesting. What do you know
Yeah.
about your opponent so far?
So I saw him when I was on the weigh-ins. He is one of the coaches from one of my teammates' opponents, and I saw him. We were actually had a little conversation, and we were just talking about the fight game. That he asked me what weight class I was, fighting out of? And he's like, oh, I fight out of the weight, out of that weight class too. And I was like, all right, that's a little, I just didn't think much about it. And once I went out there, did my fight, and went back to the locker room to get stitches, my coach told me, hey, he wants to fight you. I'm not too sure if you're interested. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that he called me out like that, because I was like, all right, cool. You're going to get what you're expecting, which is the complete version of me as a fighter and making sure that everything's on check. So right away I told him, hey, I just got a couple of stitches. My whole body is healthy. Let's run it. I'm not gonna say no to a fight. So that's how that fight came along. And yeah, he announced it. That's about it. We're back in July 11th. But this is what I do for a living. I do construction part time, but man, fighting is what I do. It's something that I'm good at and something I always keep improving. So once he told me, hey, you want to fight? I was like, yeah, dog. That's what fighters do. I'm gonna stay ready and I'm gonna go out there and perform.
So safe to say, not personal, but did that spark a little bit of motivation in you?
Of course, because it's something that I like about it, the fact that he called me out the most. Because hey, like, I want to fight you, and I was like, all right, cool. Like, he didn't tell me that to my face, but he said it to my coach, right? We're like, I want to fight him. I was like, I mean, all right, cool, but I just make sure that I'll make sure I get the work done. And I don't want to sound rude or anything, but I don't like that. I don't like the fact that he wants to fight me thinking because he can win. So then I was like, all right, cool. If he wants to fight me, let's do it. Put it on paper. Let's see if that's true, and let's run it. So
What makes you a hard fighter to deal with? What makes you hard for your opponents?
I believe it's the fact that I'm hard on myself already as it is. Even when I miss practices, nobody's perfect. I've missed practice before, or even a recovery session, something. I go into the spiral where I can't even go to sleep comfortably. I go to sleep a little bit impatient, knowing that I didn't get the work done. So I am already hard on myself. And the constant battle is, can I show up for myself every day, to practice or to a recovery session, or just for myself, I need to show up for myself every day. So the fact that I put in this much effort, and, you know, money isn't everything, but money goes into the formula: money, sweat, blood, tears, frustration, sleep deprived, whatever it is. I put my body through hell and back. So I believe that that's what makes me the most dangerous fighter, because I am doing this out of a love for the fight game and the love I have to, mess people up. I love that feeling, and that's something that I have never have experienced before, that feeling of knowing that you beat somebody up and you made it in a very fashion, like in a very performative way, where it looks like art. So that itself, that little trajectory of making sure that it's not just a fight, it's MMA. That's what I love about it, and making sure that I get the job done. And I think that's what makes me dangerous, because I'm not in there because of the money, or I'm not in there because of the fame. I'm in there because I love it.
Determined, accountable, maybe a bit obsessed with the sport. I'm hearing also.
hmm Big time. Yeah, you have to be a little crazy to step into the cage. Am I right? But I believe obsession beats talent any day, but discipline beats obsession. You can always be obsessed, but if you don't put in the work, you're gonna be in some deep trouble sometimes. So I just gotta show up, and even though sometimes I don't feel like it, I just show up, put in the work, and I believe the obsession just carries along by itself.
Victor Santillan III, we can see him back in action. CFC 7, July 11, El Paso. Check him out. He's from the Elite Kickboxing Academy. The scene in El Paso, southern New Mexico, that area, it's blowing up right now. It's good to see all the action, all the fights, all the gyms. Appreciate you for dropping by the show tonight.
Of course, thank you. And obviously, whatever you need, let me know. I'll be here. And thank you so much for having me here.
It's great getting to talk with you, sir. You have a good night.
Likewise. Have a good one. Thank you.